Well, I guess we're esteemed judges now. That's great. Hi, I'm Tim Moore, and welcome. I'm Tim Moore from the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. And my colleagues are?
I'm Susan Firestone. I'm a retired patent attorney from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
My name is Lester Brooks. I teach in the history department at Anne Arundel Community College in Arnold, Maryland.
And you guys are?
Good afternoon. I am Dylan Remote.
My name is James Northrop. Good afternoon.
And my name is Matthew Shoemaker, and our teacher is Mr. Berner.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for volunteering your time on a Sunday and providing our students with this excellent educational opportunity. I enjoy sitting back and listening to the conversation.
Well, we're making millions off of this, Gregory.
Well, good for you then. If you can get me in on the cut, I'd like some.
Yeah, right.
Buy our book.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do question 2, and I should come as surprise to no one. I'll read it, and then we'll get down to business. One founder claimed that the representatives should refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through a medium of chosen body of citizens, whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? What alternative systems of representation were considered by the founders, and what alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered here in the 21st century? You may begin.
Thank you. To be representative of an entire group of people is an honor bestowed to only the most learned men and women of society. In order for a representative democracy to be feasible, these representatives must be held to the highest standards to ensure that the rights of the people are upheld, even though they are not directly part of the government. Most will agree that constant participation of every person in the government is impossible.
Not only would it be impossible for everyone to stay informed, working in government itself is a full-time job, and there are countless other jobs that need to be done to ensure the prosperity of our country. However, the lack of a direct government position does not mean that one is not directly in participation in government.
It is the ideas of the people that shape the way the government runs. For, in order to be voted into office, politicians must please the people by making laws and legislations based on the change the people wish to see. However, the relationship is symbiotic and beneficial to all involved. The people will give their power to those that they wish to see in government, and in turn, the government officials will amplify and fight for the ideas of those they represent to keep their power and further their values.
However, there were alternate forms of democracy that our founders considered that ultimately failed due to the nature of our country. There were those who believed that direct democracy was possible due to early forms of colonial interactions such as town hall meetings. However, America quickly became so large and diverse that our founders settled on representative democracy. Another issue facing our founders was the exact structure of our government. To gain more local control, the founders first opted for a confederation as adopted from the Native American government, such as the Iroquois. This turned out to be a weak and ineffective government as our nation continued to expand.
Furthermore, our founders learned that a harsh lesson under the colonial rule of England and did not wish to grant the central government vast powers. In the end, federalism through a representative government became the best of everything our founders had hoped for. With this representative government, the people placed most of their faith in their elected legislatures while limiting the powers of an overbearing executive.
In the modern day, we find ourselves with the same form of government, yet it has become a shadow of its former self. Since the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, the misconception that the executive branch should be the one to take the lead has ran rampant throughout our country. Coincidentally, this was during the same time period that the US became a major world power through Roosevelt's usage of big stick diplomacy. The combination of this foreign policy and Roosevelt's tendency to take the reins led our country to becoming more fast-paced and focused on policing the rest of the world, much to the dismay of our founders in Washington.
The branch that suffered the most from this was our legislature. As the years progressed and presidents were more like Teddy Roosevelt, as was the standard set by him, Congress was unable to keep up with the quick decisions that people came to expect.
This offers an explanation as to why the approval ratings for congressmen and women remain stagnant in the single digits, while presidents usually see approval ratings of upwards of 45%.
During the year 1787, on the final day of the Constitutional Convention, the American people gathered to learn the fate of their country. They asked them whether they had decided on a republic or a monarchy, and it was Benjamin Franklin who replied, "A republic. It is our responsibility to keep it." And with this response, he decided the fate of our nation for centuries to come. However, the system we use today is plagued with adversary and modern struggles now not outlined by the Constitution. With that being said, hundreds of years ago, the Founding Fathers chose to believe in our system of government, even with its imperfections.
Thank you. Susan, Lester, either you want to start out?
Okay, I guess I can jump into this, and I want to take it in this direction. Let's say that you have some concerns that have not been met by Congress. Let's say you're part of a group and your concerns have not been met by Congress. What are you going to do?
Well, outlined in the Constitution, there are many ways that people can address a problem without directly being a government official themselves. They can lobby for the issue, they can peacefully protest, or in extreme cases, they may even find themselves running in the next election. And whether they win the office or not is not necessarily important, as the ideas of third-party candidates are often adopted by the larger parties to hopefully gain a larger vote in the next election. So whether or not they are successful, their ideas will not be forgotten.
For example, with the Green Party, they've been trying to go towards vehicles that are not run on gasoline, and they have brought up this idea many of times. So overall, they presented these ideas to the American people, and obviously they knew they could not win the presidency, but they knew that a party would have to adopt these policies. So that is what the Democratic Party did, and that is what happened that is one reason why the Keystone Pipeline was closed, because we were trying to get rid of fossil fuel usage.
If you are specifically talking about human rights violations, as you use the word concerns, the government is abusing its people. It has a long train of abuses against its people, and the people have stated their concerns and how they would like the government to change, and the government has not. Then at that point, we have the right and the power to change and abolish our government and put in a new system that would support our ideals.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that the House of Representatives is too small to accurately represent people in this country?
Well, just as we originally intended with the Virginia plan and the Senate being a bicameral system, I believe that the House of Representatives is accurate in its representation of the larger states as having more representatives and the smaller states as having fewer. I think the Senate also nicely balances this out so that larger states aren't in control of everything and that smaller states actually do have a say in the government, as it should not be run by solely the large states with the high populations. Persons in small matter
To a
as well.
certain degree, I do agree with my colleague. The Great Compromise was an amazing, it was a great compromise for both sides, for small states and large states, and large because we now have the Senate and House of Representatives. But at the same time, today, the United States is not the same as it was 200 years ago. There are territories and pieces of land that the United States own that they do not have a voice in the House of Representatives, and personally, I feel they should. I do not believe that there should be any in-between gray area of land that the United States owns. If the United States owns an island or a territory, we should adopt that and make it a state and give them representation in the House.
I have a question about the 18th century. The Anti-Federalists looked at this statement and others like Madison and just scratched their heads like, you've got to be kidding me. What were their objections to this theory that Madison's proposing of representation?
One main issue that they came in conflict with was that the people that they would elect would not push the ideals of the people. They would be a trustee instead of a delegate. They would push their own personal beliefs instead of the beliefs of the citizens that elected them in. This was a major issue for the anti-federalists.
Mhm.
But as we see today, there are sometimes that issue, but there are also sometimes iron triangles where the elected officials works with Congress and works with a special interest group to really be a lawmaking machine and pass legislature for the people within that triangle.
Do you feel that when you look at our system, that all are truly represented? I mean, you guys are young. Are your views taken into consideration based on age? There's also poverty. Are those impoverished? Are they truly reflected?
I think it's important to attempt to have a diverse representation throughout our country, and that's something that we often fail to do for the most part. However, I feel that we have been getting better through new voting legislation, allowing more people to get to the voting booths. There are still things I would like to see. We could make Election Day a federal holiday so that we can get as large a voter turnout as possible, so that hopefully we can increase diversity and overall just have a more refined system to amplify the voice of the people.
And overall, I feel that the goal that we need to achieve today is getting the voice of the minorities out, and this can be done through third parties.
I have a question. During the convention, they settled upon setting up the House of Representative districts being 30,000 people in it. Do you think that that was too large, or why do you think they did that at 30,000 and not go with the 10,000 by Mr. Pinckney or 40,000 originally suggested?
We could see this as an attempt to wash out the opinions that they were unfavor for. So for example, today we can see gerrymandering as a large issue within the election process. Though racial gerrymandering and population gerrymandering has been deemed illegal by the Supreme Court, in the court case Rucho v. Common Cause, political gerrymandering has been left up to the states. And all that means is if the states choose to allow political gerrymandering, there is no federal guideline opposing that. So we can see that even today, there are small issues in democracy that make it so that some people's opinion are not seen in the spotlight due to issues woven into democracy.
And
And
just
you can go.
as it would be difficult to have a direct democracy itself, it would be extremely difficult if we were to increase the population of the House of Representatives by even a mere 5,000 at this point, because it just gets more and more.
Go ahead and finish.
It just gets more and more difficult to get things done. And I'm all for greater representation of minorities and other groups that go unrepresented often, but in a political sense and in a functioning sense, it just would become increasingly difficult to get things done.
Thank you. We'll offer some feedback here for a couple minutes. Lester, you want to start?
Okay. I like this introduction because it seemed like you have really given some thought about current issues. You start out, representation is an honor. And we should hold representatives to a higher standard. There should be a symbiotic relationship with the people. But then you mentioned, I caught on when you said Benjamin Franklin, a republic, if you can keep it. And so to link those two, are we holding individuals to a higher standard? And I think it shows you've been given some thought to that whole issue. And I liked how you brought that out at the beginning. You also talked about the Articles of Confederation and the ideas of the Iroquois. I mean, we don't hear that very often. And you went on to talk about federalism. To my question, I like that idea that you gave a whole list of things: lobbying, protesting, running for office, third party, third party candidates. But then you got to the Declaration of Independence, which is important because that gave people the right to rebel, to overthrow their government. And we see that also in history, right? The Confederate States of America decided that their concerns weren't being met, and they took it to the extreme level. So I think a very good job, a solid performance, and very thoughtful performance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with that. I enjoyed your presentations. It was very thought out and well structured. I liked also the fact that you mentioned that being a shadow, our representation, our country is a shadow of its former self. Actually, is this humongous glob compared to its former self. It's amalgam, I thought of, but I thought that was nicely done, and that we've started policing the rest of the world. And you brought us from 1787 up through into the modern era, and then you ended with 1787 again with the Republic. And you did, I thought, a nice job of answering the questions, which I know can get kind of scary. And I've noticed that all three of you are doing 2 units, which is, you should be commended for just doing that, because that's a lot of work that you 3 did. So, but I enjoyed it. So good job. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did a couple of really nice things. I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to go to kind of like ground zero of the congressional problem, and you're laying that problem at Teddy Roosevelt's feet. Now, I actually might quibble with you on that, but that doesn't matter. But the fact that you were willing to say, here's where we think there's this problem of congressional, or whatever problems we want to lay at the feet of Congress, we're going to start with Roosevelt. And I appreciated that. I really did. And I think that you made a reasonable argument for it. You also did some interesting things with, what was it? Yeah, maybe third parties is our solution. I mean, to entertain some of these possibilities the way you did, I thought you used those fairly effectively. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more about the anti-federalist critique, the ratios of representation, the number compared to their state legislatures. A little bit more of the history from the 18th century, I think, would have bolstered your argument. One final comment: be careful with the Iroquois thesis. There's a lot of historiography that's pretty much blown it out of the water that the Iroquois influence, was there. And I know it's in a lot of history books and it's still there, but it's been pretty much obliterated. So be careful with that, and don't worry about that. I'm not going to beat you up on that, but just be aware that the Iroquois thesis is pretty much under scrutiny and dismissed at this point. But on the whole, I thought, your use of evidence was pretty solid, and I enjoyed our conversation. And instead of being commended for doing 2 units, I think you ought to be pitied. Wow, what an undertaking. What, unbelievable.
Good luck the rest of the way.
Good luck, yes.
Thanks again for your time on a Sunday. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Good luck.